hacías despacito. No eras como Daddy, eras como Bad Bunny. Tu flow bastante cari, alright. Hermoso y con timidez me gusta. Y con esa sencillez que asusta. Sabes bien cómo es que es combi completa de cabeza a los pies. Sin effects, mami, yo te entono. Te subo el pitch y te derrito el cono. En mis historias siempre te menciono. Para esa reina necesito un trono. Sin effects, mami, yo te entono. Con esos besos, chica, me emocionó. Con tu cuerpo y tu nivel, quieres otra vez. Sé que tú quieres conmigo, amor. Todos esos placeres que brinda la vida y que nos hace tan feliz. Sé que tú quieres conmigo, amor. Todos esos placeres, como acariciarte y conocerte de raíz. Vamos, 1, 2, 3, sin estrés. Muéstrame sus pasos, te cuento hasta 10 y ven. Yo sé que tú quieres moverlo sin pena, ven, sin estrés. Muéstrame sus pasos, te cuento hasta 10 y ven. Yo sé que tú quieres. Sé que tú quieres conmigo, amor. Todos esos placeres que brinda la vida y que nos hace tan feliz. Sé que tú quieres conmigo, amor. Todos esos placeres, como acariciarte y conocerte de raíz. Inicio el futuro, bebé. Ya tú sabes.
I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone and progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone in affection, I summon and dub it. Cause I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone and progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone in affection, I summon and dub it. Why you be all on my line about nothing? Why won't you go get you $1 or something? Don't hang with it, who line for nothing. I see that we different, you riding, I double. I don't do discussions on bragging about hundreds. Don't go to your places, I know that they sunken. Don't call me your brother, I barely could trust it. I talked to a shorty, she bagging the bugging. And I'ma need all of my dollars on corporate, so hand me the money, I divvy the pie. I'ma give all of my people a portion to build them a fortune on flipping the ride. I can't be mixy when iffy the vibe, and 40 on 50 is really the time. Why is you all on my phone like you want me, like you wasn't pushing the kid to the side? I don't know if you thinking I'm blind. Cross on my crosses and dot on my eyes. Done with your efforts, I'm dealing with pressures. I know it's a lesson, that's word of the wise. Dubbing the mixes I'm mixing, I know I've been missing. I needed some personal time. All the pictures, dimensions, I don't with your digits. I mean it, I'm staying inside. Cause I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone and progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone in affection, I summon and dub it. Cause I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone and progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone in affection, I summon and dub it.
got something. Tonight I'll be guessing, but I don't really have a case. You don't have to mention, you just like their attention. It's written all over your face. I don't wanna play the quiet type when I'm near you. Reading old messages on my phone every time I see you. Tell me, is this part of an act just to keep your image intact? If you think that strategy's smart, I'm not gonna defend my beating heart.
Hello, 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 and welcome in to Esports Weekly, everybody. It's another fantastic edition of your favorite esports show on the entire planet. I'm Ryan Bailey. I'll be your host as per usual, and we've got a jam-packed show today. We don't have time to do anything but talk about the SPL because it's a fully slated schedule with a bunch of different teams, including our first look at new Luminosity. So we'll get a chance to talk to Melissa Posada, of course, the best taco, the correspondent for Team LG, and see how they're feeling with their new roster. And we'll get a chance to hear exclusive interviews with both Kabam and Biggie ahead of both Splice and Dignitas's games this week. But first, I want to start with what happened last week. We spent a lot of last week's episode talking about this big test for Rival. You know, they had a really disappointing MSI. We all thought they were going to be the best team in the world, and then we lose to a minor league team. Yeah. It happens to the best of us. What can I say? And Armada's a talented one. They're no slouches. But we've talked a lot about that. Let's talk about what's happening with Rival right now, and that's that they have returned to form instantly. We had a test week for United in Phase 1. This was Rival's test week, basically right off the bat here in Phase 2. They faced off against Dignitas and the Pittsburgh Knights and only dropped 2 games. 3-1 in both of those sets, and that is huge for this Rival squad. Not only because I think it revamps the confidence, the public is back in the Rival corner, everyone's feeling good. It was just 2 games against Armada. Who cares? It's not at Worlds. We were feeling good. Everyone was looking fantastic again. Captain Twig started off a little bit sleepy, then started looking like his old self again. Arkil was making plays in the dual lane, which I think those two, after particularly bad performances against Armada, it was important for them to get the ball rolling again. Polar Bear Mike as well, who looked like he was returning to form. And all of a sudden, Rival has not only righted the ship, but they might be your number 1 seed for Worlds already. As long as they take care of business down the stretch, they're good. They've already taken out 2 of the top teams. Yes, still have Splice. Yes, still have Renegades. A lot of these other really good teams as well. But they already beat Dig and PK again. And now we're in commanding position to be your first seed at Worlds just a couple weeks into Phase 2. Impressive stuff from the Rival boys. Certainly getting an A+ on their test week. Let's see the rest of the schedule from last week so you can see what else you may have missed. E United looks good up against SK. They beat them 3-1. The new Obey Alliance roster did not inspire too much, though Game 1 was very, very close between them and SK. So SK going 1-1 on the week. Could have been worse, though they're still a little bit further down in the standings right now. Remember, these all carry over. 5-6 so far on the year for the SK Gaming boys, though they are in the plus minuses. Not quite the case for SSG, Obey Alliance, and LG. LG, if they win this week, can immediately jump out of the basement at this point. And that's something that you're looking forward to if you're an LG fan. They are very close in that plus-minus. They've won a decent amount of games despite not finding a set win quite yet. And I think that's the team that everyone has their eye on right now, on whether or not they will be able to improve and get to that middle of the pack. No one's expecting Luminosity to be the top card all of a sudden here in Phase 2 with just the addition of Snoopy coming in and helping out this squad alongside Ionic. But that dynamic duo who has a long history together, alongside Lasber getting comfortable again in jungle, you look down the roster at just the talent level of this team, LG's not looking too bad. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Xaylia was a top solo laner on a top team. Well, you can make the debate on whether or not Xaylia himself was a top solo laner, but he was on a top team in Obey Alliance, and they had a lot of success, so I don't know. This LG squad all of a sudden doesn't look like they're going to be floundering in the basement for too much longer. In fact, if anything, I don't know how you look at the roster and the level of talent they have, especially with Lasber getting more comfortable in jungle, and say that they're anything but potential ace seed right now, moving Space Station and Obey Alliance down a peg just a little bit. Obey did look a little bit better, and these bottom-end teams, the Space Stations, the Obey Alliances, and the Luminosities, are going to be teams to watch out for as we get closer towards the end of the year and to these Worlds qualifying lands. Don't forget, everybody, that old trifecta roster, the one with Paul and Sam and Zap and all those guys, they struggled an awful lot last year, got hot at the right time, and ended up being a top 4 team at the World Championships. Not saying that's what's going to happen to SSG, so all the Bear and Jeff fans, hold on a second. They still have a lot of work to do, but the year is not over for these teams, despite being -20 or -23, whatever it is, in the plus-minus department. We are doing okay, bottom-end teams. So keep your eyes on the prize. We're going late game here if you're one of those bottom end squads. By the way, they should probably get there soon because those teams clearly have a lot of work to do. It's not like the top end teams or the middle end are getting any worse right now. We haven't even seen Renegades quite yet after their win in MSI, so I'm excited for that coming up very shortly. I believe they play this week, actually. Speaking of what may be happening this week, we're going to get top plays for you this week, but we still have to go over last week's top plays. We had a lot of objective steals as per usual. Objective securing seems to be a little bit of a problem, but that's for the teams in the future to figure out. These teams did not do a great job of figuring them out. We'll start with Arkil stealing away the Pyromancer against Dignitas. This is not the only rival versus Dig objective steal clip we're going to have today. A lot of it is going to be via Final K, but this one was all Arkil. Heroine and Variety unable to secure this Pyro in the face of Arkil and the rest of Team Rival. Number 4, we're going to head to the minor league and show you a little quick play there. Cope Baby moving to the mid lane after some roster changes there for the roster. Ends up making a nice play on the Giannis. I say it all the time. People who move to mid lane feel like they can all play Giannis because they see all the best do it and they're like, yo, this got so easy. You walk through walls. Cope makes it look pretty easy right there. Taking down Meerkat, truly a challenge for any mortal. Congratulations to Cope, baby. Taking down Meerkat alone should be a top 5 play if you ask me. Number 3, Sam for Soccer. This is not the only time you're going to see him on this top 5 play list. He was making plays all last week. This Fire Giant steal over E United really started to swing the game back in SK's favor. However, E United also did end up winning this game, but up and over the top with Mystic Rush right on time. Sam for Soccer played great. In fact, why move away from the young man? In fact, let's get right to number 2, where his defensive play on Thor. I mean, we could have done a whole highlight reel on Sam's Thor in this game too, but this play in particular was just incredible. The double wall onto Emilito and Kalas into the double tap. They double kill the duo lane instantly. SK was on the defensive and managed to pull out a victory in that game. Very impressive work from the SK boys, led by Sam for Soccer in that game. Watch out, Sam getting hot. A good sign for SK Gaming. But number 1, it's fine okay. And his multiple objective steals. This first one, you walk right by the Gold Fury and you just kind of baby sneeze right on top of it. No one sees him coming. Y'all mind? Thank you very much. And then turns and gets right out of there. And then, you know, that was so nice. I think I'll have it a second time. Knocks up Ataraxi to prevent the secure and then turns around and throws out the 2 yet again. Hey, have you guys heard of this guy, Final K? Yeah, I don't know. He just like plays a game, plays solo lane for Rival, kind of is killing everybody right now. I don't know. Just keep your eye out for him. He's pretty good. Maybe. Not his first appearance at number 1 in the top 5 plays. That should tell you quite a bit about Final K's level of play as per usual. Let's take a look at the week schedule coming up so you can see exactly what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to open on Thursday with Splice and Renegades. Then we get our first look at LG, but certainly not our last, because they will open up against Dignitas on Friday. And then SK Gaming, after going 1-1 last week, look to really bolster their resume with a potential victory over the Pittsburgh Knights, who are a little bit reeling, I would say, from their loss up against Rival not too long ago. So stay tuned. We got a whole show for you here at Esports Weekly. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, we got a new show coming out called Roll Q. This week on the premiere episode, we sat down with a bunch of the best ADCs to ever do it and talk about their Hunter play, or as Funball often says during the episode, the carries, because there's a distinct difference.
I think Season 3, Emilito was the best Hunter has ever played. Well, I guess he played Aegis actually.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, you know.
Carries.
Yeah.
Best carry player the game has seen.
So check it out, and thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Esports Weekly. Renegades, last time we saw them, they were lifting the trophy at the Midseason Invitational. We're finally going to get a chance to see them here in Phase 2 to talk about their debut. We've got their correspondent, Anatoly, joining us here on the desk. Totally, I mean, Renegades got to be riding high right now still. I mean, even it's been a couple weeks, but winning MSI, the biggest LAN of the year so far, has got to be a big boost.
And the way they did it, they went undefeated, beating out Pittsburgh Knights the first round, beating out Dignitas the next round, and then Splice, a team that they lost to in the first phase, managing to find that clean sweep.
Now, do you think that kind of getting the target on your back after this, I mean, they came in as the 6th seed to MSI. A lot of people were talking about them, but not as potential favorites. Now, no one's going to take them lightly. Everyone knows as a team that you have to really be prepared for. Do you think that might hurt them at all?
I think it does, but I don't think it's going to hurt their chances if they do qualify to Worlds, because this is a team that staggered and slowed down during Phase 1, going 5-4. They went 3-0 beating Dignitas, but then ultimately slowing things down. But they definitely step it up when it matters the most. They are basically the innovators of the Smite meta for at least Season 6 Phase 1, where Season 5 it was a lot of the Splice action, and then a lot of teams looked at what Renegades was doing off of Dardis' on her mid and kind of replicated that.
Yeah, I really agree with you. I think they did set a lot of the meta, not only with the picks of the on her mid and the Zhonghui and the duo lane and that kind of stuff, but the start that a lot of teams are doing now with the support starting at speed, rotating underneath the red. That was a Raffer thing they were doing at MSI. And so it's just a matter of, are they going to be able to do the same thing when it comes to all these mid-season changes?
I think they can, because they really play off of Dardes and Funballer, or at least in the beginning of Phase number 1. During the LAN, it was actually a lot of Nika finishing off number 1 in the KDA department at 10.0. Very impressive stat, especially for a solo laner. When this team was first formulated, I had like a little bit of an asterisk or a question mark of like how Nika would perform, but he definitely stepped up a LAN. I have a lot of high hopes for them in Phase 2.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, Nika, we talked so much about Dardes and Raffer and Funballer and Cherio. Nika has quietly been one of the best solos in the entire world so far. What do you think has been the biggest difference for him between last year and this year?
I think that it's just his different style that he brings. It's not just his style, but the other styles between Cherio, Funballer. Dardes brings his own uniqueness to this team, and the combination of these two different styles has just been allowing Renegades to succeed so well. And Nika has been so consistent with a very small god pool, I'd say. In 32 games, he's only played 8 different gods in before the MSI LAN, and it's worked out for him. It doesn't really matter that he has a small god pool, because he's just going to outright beat you anyway.
I'm surprised that it's 8, to be honest with you. I mean, I thought you were going to say like 5.
No.
Just off the top of my head. I mean, it's a lot of Yorm, a lot of Arthur, and a lot of Achilles, and everything else has kind of been by the wayside. Do you think that that's an area where teams are going to start to attack Renegades, or do you think that Nika can either expand it or make those, 6, 7, 8 gods work just as well as the top 3?
I don't think it's worth it in Season 6 to ever focus out any solo laner, especially Nika. So I think if anything, Renegades, their target on their back is going to have to be Dardes in the mid lane. Try to get him out of the equation, get him less comfortable, maybe even focusing out Cherio.
Well, their first match, Renegades, in Phase 2 is going to be up against a team they just beat at the Midseason Invitational. It is Splice. And Splice is going to be coming in hungry to prove that sweep was just a fluke.
It definitely, but now, though, Splice is with a different roster. Before in the MSI was with Baskin, with Solo Patrol. Now, a little bit of a different dynamic going into this next matchup. There should definitely be back and forth, but I got to give a slight edge to Renegades off of a hot, undefeated streak from the Midseason Invitational.
That is true, but at the same time, I mean, Splice gets all this tape to watch of them losing, and you can speak to this as a former player. You usually learn more from the tapes of you losing than you do winning.
You really do. So I think Splice is going to improve themselves and their chemistry, but no one really has tape of what Renegades did or practiced in Phase 2. So all the strategies that they've been kind of formulating behind the scenes could be kind of an unexpected circumstances throughout these games.
Now, this team of Renegades is really led by Raffer. We've heard from him time and time again when it comes to this year and the mentality for this squad. I think one of the big things that stood out for me is that he said that this mid-season invitational victory was one of the most enjoyable of his career, if not the most. And I think that that's interesting because he's won 2 world championships, but you can tell the guy is still hungry for victory, and that's a key point for this team.
This feels like the old Panthera, the old Epsilon of the Season 2, Season 3 days when it transitioned to Energy. These 5 players have so much good mechanics behind them, and the way their chemistry syncs up, like Dardes playing whatever he wants, Funballer playing whatever he wants. He was basically bringing out the mages in the dual lane before the mid-season changes, with the Poseidons, with the Souls as well. I'm expecting that to continue throughout Phase 2, and I'm expecting more wins for Renegades.
Do you you think that they will kind of ascend from that 6 seed slot, or do you think that they are more of a land-centric team and we shouldn't expect great things from them in regular season play?
It's hard to say because this is the first time or the first year we're actually seeing this team as a whole. So if history repeats itself, I'm not really worried about their land performance, but I would be more confident if they had like the number 4 spot, number 3 spot, maybe number 6, cutting it a little bit too close because you might not even make it to HRX to begin with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Real quick before we go, Toli, give me one matchup to watch between Renegades and Splice. Which lane are you looking at?
I'm definitely looking at the mid lane. I think that Dardas is always going to bringing in the hotness.
Dardas has been arguably the best player in the world as of late and competing with Cyclone Spin, so I always like watching, even though they're not against each other, how those two end up carrying against one another. Totally, thank you very much for joining us and talking about your MSI champion, Renegades. We're going to talk to the Splice correspondent right on the other side and get a chance to hear from their coach, Kabam, about how they're feeling about this matchup. Welcome back to Esports Weekly, everybody. We just talked to Anatoly about how the MSI champions, Renegades, are feeling going up into their rematch against Splice. But we got to see how the runners-up are going to take the crown back. And to do that, we've got Taco joining us here on the set. Taco, I got to say, we've been doing a lot of promos as of late for this Sweet Victory Battle Pass. You look like that you could join in with this hair. It's a great look.
I'm really just trying to promote the company as much as possible here, Aggro.
Team player.
The Sweet Victory Battle Chess, definitely the way to go. Soul Skin, become it, real life.
Gems. That's what we're talking about here on
Lots
Esports
of
Weekly.
them.
Yeah, all of the gems. Taco, Splice really felt confident, I think, going up against Renegades. Those two teams were clearly the best two at that tournament, I think. But Renegades made it look pretty easy against them. Having talked to Splice, what have they learned since that set?
Well, that was a pretty rough set, I think, in general for the Splice fellas, simply because of the fact that Renegades were their heavy scrim partners heading into MSI. So probably one of the worst matchups, copying that phrase verbatim from Aurora, but it was really interesting, I think, for the team to kind of get a better understanding of those adaptations that Renegades were able to make throughout the drafting period, as well as just their in-game play style. One big thing that Splice really pointed out, including their coach Kabam, when I had a chance to talk to them afterwards, was the fact that they had, or the Renegades that is in the they had a few picks that were just unexpected for the team, and something that Splice now wants to, I think, harp in a little bit more so is just trying to get a better comfort area for their new solo laner, Solo or Troll. But these sets leading, or ever since MSI ended and Phase 2 began, has really just been practice mode for the team.
Yeah, I mean, Solo, we've seen him debut here for Splice in Phase 2, and he looked phenomenal. He looks like he's assimilated very well already.
It's really just a confidence factor, I think, when it came to SOT. When he first played with the team to fill in against that rival set, it didn't really seem as though he felt as if he was entirely comfortable in the LAN setting, and that can be a really rough experience, especially with him being one of the younger players of the league. I believe he's only 17 right now, and it's every bit relevant because even though he's been around this competitive scene for a while, this is his first real chance to debut when he's been pretty much practicing and trying to perfect his craft here.
Well, he's done a pretty good job of it so far, no doubt about that. This matchup in particular, though, against the Renegades, I mean, Toli was saying that he's looking forward to the mid lane matchup and what Dardes can bring yet again. How do you think Solo is going to do up against Nika, who's had a very, very good season?
I am really excited to see how that solo lane breaks down between the two. I think that Nika has done a fantastic job for the Renegades so far. He's been a very difficult player to read, and when it comes to solo laners, it can sometimes be a little bit predictable when their rotations are going to come through, typically after that tower is sieged. But for Nika, you just never really know what to expect from him, and that's why I love the fact that Splice has Solo or Troll now in that solo lane role. The guy has tons of experience, and I think that while he doesn't necessarily have the most competitive experience, all of his playtime in amateur leagues and ranked and such is definitely going to help him be flexible enough to deal with Nika.
He's definitely got a big god pool, and I think that's one thing that's difficult to really lock down when your solo laner has a lot of different options that they can go to, especially when your team has such a wide open draft when Aurora is able to play such aggressive frontliners and really take on a lot of that role. I'm also excited to see how Aurora is able to adapt up against Raffer, who looked very good against Splice.
It's tough trying to beat out Renegades, though, when Raffer is such a perfect bait master with everything that he does and the way that he chooses to position himself throughout the map. Something that I really like about Splice, though, is you can clearly tell just how much space their front line is able to create a lot of times. And seeing the trade-off between Aurora and Solo or Troll, these two are going to really be challenged up against the Renegades here. Now that they've had a little bit more practice time to kind of get Solo or Troll a bit more assimilated here, it's not going to be easy against the Renegades for sure, but it should definitely be a fun set between the two.
No doubt about that. I mean, even though it was a sweep at MSI, that was a fun set, and our casters have a clean sweep for Renegades in this one, at least in their predictions. Taco, do you feel the same way?
I think you got to know which way I got to swing as the Splice correspondent, Aggro. I'm feeling Splice a little bit on this one for the rematch. I mean, they did get a little bit of insight from MSI, but I would have expected things to have changed, as well as the Renegades' preparation for Splice after that LAN.
Real quick, because we do have to throw that to that interview with Kabam, what do you think will be the biggest difference that leads to Splice's victory this time?
Really just Solo Retro's confidence.
Yeah, he's been a big part of this team in just the 1 week we saw them up against SSG. SSG not the top end of competition right now, but Solo certainly looked good right there. And if Cyclone Spin can continue to look like one of the best players in the world, that's where I think a lot of that hay can really go for Splice. Going to try and get some revenge up against the guys of Renegades. Well, we got a chance to talk to Kabam a little bit earlier on this week and talk to him about this set up against the Renegades. Let's hear what he had to say.
It's been really rough, but we rallied together at the last split with Baskin, which was, kind of a lucky call-up for us. Gave us a chance to sort of get our feet to the ground and start winning some games, which the team as a whole benefits from, obviously. Moving forward with Solar Troll, I think things are pretty good. In scrims, he's been meeting expectations. In the SSG set, he played very well, obviously. People think about the game differently, play the game differently, and that shows through sometimes in our games when you see like really weird mistakes. That's usually like a breakdown in communication. But Aurora and Scream and Ven are all pretty good at getting on the same page after that happens in most games, so just something we're working on. I generally only critique things if they're common issues. I don't go off on people because they make a mistake. I think that's one thing that people think that coaches should do, but I generally just try to focus on where they've improved and what they're doing well, and then only issues that are constantly coming up, like if somebody is constantly dying at the same time every game or losing actives poorly or something like that, that's what I'll address, but I don't usually go after people unless it's repeat mistakes.
Welcome back, everybody. E United found a very convincing win over SK Gaming last week, and now it's their chance to move up the standings even further against 10th place Luminosity, but LG's looking pretty different. We'll see if United can look just as strong as they did last week. And they go over the team. We've got Anatoly joining us once again here on Esports Weekly. Toli, last week, SK Gaming, a couple of the games were close, and then E United finally managed to pull it out. And I think that wins like that, I don't know that United really gets enough credit for them.
They really don't.
Do you agree?
They really don't get enough credit for that, because the way they started the first phase was interesting, right? With Vedium at first, and then eventually transitioning over to Emelito, where they slowed down. I think that has been the warm-up for Emelito, getting into the vibe of the environment from E United, and they bring their own special flavor. They're very similar to Renegades in their own way, like with slight differences, and they were really able to showcase that against SK Gaming. A lot of just diversity in their picks and bans as well between both Benji and Big Man in those 4 games, playing all 4 different gods each game.
Now, that being said, I think another a weakness of EU United that we've seen before was exposed in that set, which is their ability to siege sometimes does end up hurting them. I mean, we think of the game against Splice where they're up by 1 million, can't close that game out. Game 2, they have a lot of trouble sieging against SK's comp, despite SK making a lot of good plays. Do you think that's a reason for concern for this team moving forward?
No, I just think that that's kind of like a tap on the shoulder for SK Gaming, saying like, okay, they're a very good team. You have to respect their efforts as well. All the teams in the SPL are these kinds of defensive-minded teams that know how to hold their own when it comes to those late-game sieges. So I'm not too worried for EU United just dropping the 1 game in a best-of-5 set. Still a very clean performance overall.
Can tell by some of these clips even their strategies have been very CC heavy. A lot of Isis, a lot of Kepri and Athena and these gods that really rotate around that lockdown of frontliners. And that seems to be a style that they're finding success with.
Callus is definitely the standout player to make those plays happen, making Big Man very comfortable. Big Man, I think, of this roster is definitely like the shining star in terms of making the kills happen, getting the last hits. He likes these high bursty mid-mages, Poseidons, the Ryzens of Phase 1. But with mid-season changes, we'll see how his god pool kind of evolves and adapts, because we've seen so many different starts between mages going in the long lane and hunters in the mid. But to be fair, Big Man can also bring out the Moose and Cobb at any given moment.
That's true. He's been a big AMC fan for quite some time now. Is he the primary win condition for United, or is it around, Benji in the solo lane? Is it Colossus setup? Where do you see most of their wins coming from?
I think if Ice gets off to a great early start, that's their win condition straight up, because the whole roster from top to bottom can easily still draw out the game to the late game and make these comebacks, same way that SK Gaming was able to do in that previous set.
Man, this United roster definitely has a lot of talent on it, and I think this win condition discussion is a good way to look at how much talent they have. And Emilito being back to form almost, I mean, certainly not to best hunter of all time status quite yet, but you can tell that it's still in there. He still got it.
The Season 3 Worlds MVP, yeah, he still got it for sure. Phase 1, a couple of hiccups after transitioning into a different meta, something that was completely different from what he was used to during the Season 2, Season 3 days with Energy, Epsilon, Panthera. But I think he's made those adaptations now, and going into Phase 2, I have high hopes for not only Emilito, but the rest of his team.
Now, up against Luminosity in particular, this is a brand new look LG squad. United seems like a team, though, that doesn't usually play down to the competition. They're going to play their own style. I also don't know how much they play up, to be fair. They're doing their thing across the board. Do you see the same way?
I think that they definitely play up a lot, because their last set in Phase 1 was against Dignitas, where they found the reverse sweep. A very impressive performance there. And the first 4 sets, they beat the teams that they were expected to beat. LG, Trifecta, Space Station Gaming, even finding the victory over SK Gaming, and then some impressive victories over Dignitas and Renegades in Phase 1. So I think that this should be a clean performance now.
Luminosity definitely is looking quite a bit different, though. I mean, this team of LG is going to look stronger, I think, here in Phase 2. Do you think that United is going to look to focus out Ionic being new on this team, or Snoopy being new in the mid lane?
I think more about focusing out Snoopy. Even though Snoopy has played mid competitively before, it's a different time from Phase 6 to the Phase 3, Phase 4 transition that he made. And the Callus versus Ionic matchup is the one that I'm really looking for, because it's always been about who can abuse the other support a little bit more.
Sure. Also, Benji versus Zalia is an area where I wouldn't be surprised to see Ice spend an awful lot of time over there in the solo lane. And I think that towards the beginning of the year, a lot of people were talking about Benji and how dominant he was again. Do you think that he fell off a little bit since the beginning, or is just everyone else is stepping up and realizing that it's not just the solo laner now?
I think that Benji is fine, honestly. He's been stepping it up. It's been a slow ramp up, but he's felt comfortable. He's not the Season 2 salt machine that we've been seeing from enemy days, but he's certainly no slouch either. I definitely put him up to the top 5 solo laners easily.
Man, that's a hard group to get into, too, with the way that FineOK and those guys have been playing so far. Normally we do predictions a little bit later. It feels like you're feeling pretty good about United, but I want to kind of zoom out for just a moment. Where do you think United is going to be a top 5 team at the end of the year, or do you think they might slip down a little bit?
I think, in fact, they're going to be a top 3 team, looking at how they're going to be able to play throughout. If they can still be a clean performance against LG today, I'm feeling confident to put them in the top 3 category.
Wow, high praise for United, but I can't blame you right now. They're looking good. Totally, thank you very much for joining us. In fact, we talked so much about LG and their new look. It's time to talk to Taco and her new look about LG coming up on the other side.
Hey guys, we got a new show coming out called Roll Q. This week on the premiere episode, we sat down with a bunch of the best ADCs to ever do it and talk about their hunter play, or as Funball often says during the episode, the carries, because there's a distinct difference.
I think Season 3, Emelito was the best hunter who's ever played. Well, I guess he played Aegis actually.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I know.
Carries.
Carries, yeah.
Best character player the game has seen.
So check it out, and thanks for watching.
Welcome back, everybody. With the changes to rosters coming into Phase 2, a lot of people were, I think, surprised at how few changes there were. And if there was going to be one team that everyone was saying the most improved tag, the most improved award, it might be LG. They had a lot of improving to do as the 10th seed, but they may have found their roster. We've got Taco joining us now to go over it. Taco, how big of a deal is it that they picked up Ionic and Snoopy?
I think it's a massive deal for the team to have picked up Snoopy, and I think Ionic also is a really nice pairing to bring along with Snoopy, just because of the fact that these two are very familiar with each other, have been on a lot of teams together in the past as well, so they do have some really good pre-established synergy that could be a fresh new look for Luminosity.
But the thing is, I mean, this change for Snoopy, it's not just the move up from minor league to SPL, it's also ADC to mid. Now, he's played mid before, but is that a cause for concern for you?
I've said it one time before already, I believe on a previous Esports Weekly, but I do hope that Luminosity at least visits the idea of potentially moving Snoopy to ADC, bringing Joshi back to that mid lane position, because having such a premier player like Snoopy, who has really kind of shocked a lot of people, even though it shouldn't really be that surprising to see Snoopy being nuts in Season 6 still, because the guy's always been pretty crazy when it comes to the hunter role, and just whatever god he tends to pick up, he's usually good at. But I do find it a little bit odd that Luminosity has such a premier player now in a role that gets significantly less farm right now with the current meta, especially in competitive play of Season 6. And I can't help but think that it might be better suited for the team to have Snoopy in that ADC role instead, where he actually has a lot more potential to carry, I think, simply because of how much farm is allotted over there right now.
I completely get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I almost think you want to pair him with Ionic as much as possible. And right now, that isn't happening in the long lane. It's in the mid lane. Do you think their already, storied history together and friendship together is going to help this team?
Well, that's one of the big saving graces, I think, of having Snoopy in that mid lane position, because you're right. The supports are very involved right now with that mid lane aspect. You see it being a trio typically between jungle, support, and mid. And Lasbra as a jungler for Luminosity, I think that this is also going to bode very well for him having Ionic here in the support role. I think that Ionic was kind of lackluster in Phase 1, especially towards the later weeks with his support play, but some of that can probably be attributed to the fact that the team just wasn't succeeding as a whole over there in Trifecta, and support is typically going to be the most punishable role whenever the team is behind as a whole. So I'm really excited to see what Ionic and Snoopy are able to accomplish here.
The big thing for me as well, I don't think enough people were talking about Lasbra returning back to jungle. To be fair, he looked outright bad towards the back end, but he had just spent all year in mid, changed teams back to jungle. Do you think this extra time down between MSI and Phase 2 is going to end up helping him and be returning to that jungler form that we were expecting to be SPL level?
I'm not completely convinced that Lasbra is going to be peak of his career status coming into Phase 2. I'm not actually certain of how much scrim time or practice time even the team had together, because Lasbra was away for a little bit on vacation, trying to take some time away, visit family, which is all completely understandable things to do, but could take a little bit of a damper against his actual play in Phase 2, because it's tough right now. And when you spend all of Phase 1 practicing and scrimming nonstop surrounding that mid lane aspect, sure, you can understand the mid lane role, and I think it's great that Lasbra now probably has a really good understanding of what that mid laner wants to do, but still trying to transition back over into the jungle, it can be some growing pains.
Well, it might be growing pains to start off their phase as well, because E United has looked good as of late. This is a team that just took down SK Gaming, who's also looked a little bit improved by my estimation. How do you think they fare up against E United?
I think that it's nowhere to go but up from here for Luminosity, and that in itself is kind of a positive for this team. I would not be surprised if Luminosity still tries to take that bamboozle approach, in the sense that in Phase 1 we saw them doing a lot of really unconventional playstyles, a lot of unconventional starts and strategies throughout the progression of their sets, and I think that this is still a team that's definitely capable of bringing out something that a lot of people might not be as familiar with, and that could catch E United off guard.
I mean, yeah, Snoopy played a lot of weird things in the ADC role. Maybe he'd bring some of that weirdness towards the mid lane as well, but I don't know if that's even the call. I mean, E United is one of those teams that is really capable of abusing you early and getting off to aggressive leads, but also some of their games go long. I mean, this is a well-rounded opposition.
It's definitely been interesting seeing E United, because this is only the beginning, right? And E United kind of had not a fall off, I want to say, for MSI, but I don't think that E United felt great about their performance at that LAN, and it kind of served as a little bit of a booster for the team to want to come through in Phase 2 and really perform strong, because when you have such established players like Emilito in that Hunter role position and everyone else on E United with so much pre-established history, that I think it's tough to not put E United over Luminosity currently, but E United at the same time doesn't have as much information against this iteration of LG.
So LG might have a rough start here. They've got a tough competition, but ultimately, where do you see this roster landing at the end of Phase 2?
I think that they have potential maybe to hit that middle of the pack area. I can't fairly place LG at the top of the standings. I think that even
you
right
can't
now,
make the whole jump to 1 seed, even though it's
look,
mathematically
man,
impossible.
Teams 1 through 6 feel like you could put these teams 1 through 3.
Sure.
And all of them, all 6 of them. And because of the fact that we've never had a top 6 this competitively close before in Smite Pro League play, I don't think that it's unfair to even label Luminosity as a 7 through 10 place team when the level of competition is where it's at.
All right, Taco, thanks very much for joining us to talk LG. Speaking of some of those top-end teams, Dignitas is looking like one of them, though they just had their spill against Rival. We will take a listen to what Biggie had to say, as well as talk to John Finch about their mentality going into their sets this week, right on the other side. Welcome back to Esports Weekly. Team Dignitas is a top card in the SPL. There's no doubt about that, but licking their wounds a little bit after last week's shellacking at the hands of Team Rival, and they've got the perfect whipping boy in LG sitting right in front of him to talk about it. We've got John Finch standing by.
Goodness.
I mean, they're the 10 seed, Finch. What do you want from me?
You gave it to both of them, too. Dig get the shellacking, and then LG the whipping boy.
It's even. Listen, normally it's Hinduman, the savage, sitting in this seat.
Right.
He would have really ate that whole throw up. I was just playing to my audience that I thought was going to be here. But
Right. Instead, it was me, and I came in too positive. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I mean, I don't know, man. That was a tough loss to Rival, but everyone loses to Rival. I told Dig not to feel too bad about it, but I think they took it to heart.
yeah, I mean, they're a competitive group. You know, this is a team that expects excellence from top to bottom. But I think that even though they lost against Rival, it's not a huge cause for concern.
No, and I agree with you, and I think that, just like you said, the team certainly wants to be able to beat Rival. I mean, obviously, of course, and I approach them with the mentality of, look, everyone has struggled with them except for Meerkat, who was apparently their kryptonite here at this point. But, I mean, they're on a, month-long winning streak here at this point, so I don't think you take that loss too hard. Instead, the boys need to focus up on their matches that are going to be coming up against them, because it's not just LG they're going to be playing. They've got the Knights not too long now as well. They have 2 matches that they absolutely need to win. The LG one is a bit of an unknown. We don't know what that roster is going to be like, how they're going to play yet, so they got to be prepped for that one. And then obviously, you know, the Knights can be tough.
Knights certainly a team that you have to watch out for in the future, but right now they've got the guys right in front of them of LG, and Dignitas does not seem like a team that's going to get particularly flustered by a team that might throw some wrenches at them in Luminosity, which has been a calling card for their old roster and certainly potential for that here today as well.
No, you're exactly right, and I had a chance to talk to Herwind about this a little bit when he was in here earlier today, and I think the thing that he's got to be focusing on is Snoopy, and the fact that he's potentially going to be seeing him in the middle lane, and what's he going to be playing, and how's that going to work around, because even though they're listed as our mid laners, you know, we swap which roles they go into and which gods they're playing and how they play. So I think there is a degree of uncertainty to what they can expect here from this LG team. And because of that, Dignitas are focusing in on what it is that they do. You know, obviously Snoopy plays a weird god pool. That's what we saw from him at MSI. They're ready for that.
Sure.
But for the most part, they're prepping for just themselves.
Yeah, Dignitas is one of those teams that's putting their mid laner in the long lane right now. Ataraxia is moving to mid, and Herwind in the long lane. How do you think that they came to that decision, and do you think it's helped them?
Yeah, that's great that you asked, because I asked him about that earlier today too. And what he said to me was, I don't think we're still 100% sure about which one's the best yet. What we do is we take it on a bit of a case-by-case basis, on the God, on who we're playing up against, on what matchups that we like, and that no one's really still 100% sold on what's the most efficient way to be playing these at some of these times. I think it has helped him. I think Herwin fits a little bit better in the mid lane. I like him there, but if they trust him on certain gods, then yeah, I know that guy can get it down the long lane too.
Hurry used to be a multi-role superstar, now just a mid lane superstar. Why not go back to the former? Looks like everyone feeling pretty confident in Dignitas' chances up against Luminosity. Look, top seed in the SPL versus the 10th seed, even with some changes, Dignitas have to be an overwhelming favorite.
Man, it sure looks like that's what everyone else thinks. I'm actually a little bit surprised everyone else put that in, because when I put in Dignitas, it was just me that put it. So I was a bit surprised everyone else followed me to Dignitas as their pick. Yeah.
So you were the first one to put in your pick, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, that's where I got to with that one. I tried to do the thing where I pretend I was going to pick someone else, and I got there a different way this time. I thought that was pretty good how I did that.
If you say so.
Dignitas are the favorite in this next one, obviously, but I think this LG roster, the way they're set up, could be a surprise.
Who are you looking at for this Dignitas roster to kind of either change their play style or improve the most if they want to be the top card in the SPL overall?
I know I talked a lot about Hurwin. It's going to sound like a cop-out, but that's because I think that matchup really could be the most important one. He's the one that's potentially up against what I think is LG's superstar in Snoopy, so whoever it is that's against him is going to have to absolutely show up.
Well, we had a chance to talk to Biggie in studio just a little bit ago, so let's take a listen to what the coach for Team Dignitas had to say.
I think we started strong, a little bit of a honeymoon phase, and then we kind of dipped towards the end, and now we're still trying to figure ourselves out a bit again after the meta shifted. And definitely Nate being a shot caller is we have some real proper leadership now. Just he will take in a lot of opinions on, my opinions, and then in game, tricks or Harry, what they want to do, and then he will kind of just decide from there. Whereas I think a lot of other shot callers will just, be very dominant in communication and say, this is what we're doing, they're doing this now. I just think it was just a long split, and we had a lot of time in between games, and I feel like the intensity dropped a bit from us, especially in practice, and we just couldn't, pick it up in time. It's definitely improved now, but obviously we lost to Rival. We still have some, problems to work on.
Welcome back, everybody. SK Gaming has been a team that has had their share of ups and downs so far this year, and it's time to see if they can really right the ship all the way. But every week seems like another tough matchup for them. To go over it, we've got Tom Badinger here in studio with us. Tom, SK Gaming, we never know what we're going to get, it feels like. I mean, they have these great highs and then these lows. I mean, yes, they beat Obey 3-0, but Game 1 was awfully close last week, probably closer than it should have been. Are you feeling the same way that I am, that they're a little bit too inconsistent?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that this team has a lot of positivity. Anytime I talk to them, Neil is absolutely very comfortable. And you know what? To be honest with you, I buy it. A lot of times, you'll talk to teams and they'll be like, "Oh, hey, we think we're going to win. We think we're very comfortable. We're okay with losing games." And you go, "Okay, what are you going to tell your girlfriend when you close the door?" When I talk to these guys on SK Gaming, they're comfortable and they look at their losses as learning experiences, and I honestly buy that, Ryan. I think that right now, what Neil said to me a couple of weeks ago is very poignant. He was like, "Look, we don't care about seeding for Worlds. We want to get there. We want to skip that first portion, so we want to top qualify, and that's all we're really concerned about. So I look at what SK Gaming's doing, and yes, I agree that they're too inconsistent to answer your question with a yes or no, but my confirmation after that is, but they're doing right things with the losses, and they're still on track. They're not at the bottom. They're still on track to do well at to find themselves in a position to do well at Worlds.
Sure.
So eye test, yeah. Analyst, after you crunch the numbers, they're doing the job.
I just feel like, I mean, they've got another tough matchup against the Pittsburgh Knights, and I'm seeing into my crystal ball right here. And here's what's going to happen: their first 2 games are going to be really close, and they're going to lose, and then they're going to get blown out game 3, and it's going to be a 3-0. That's like the vibe I'm getting every time.
See, I'm getting slightly above that. I'm getting that the same exact thing, except maybe they'll win 2 and they'll get blown out in game number 5. That's really what I'm seeing, because I do see some of that success. Excuse me. So when I look at this SK Gaming team, I mean, that's the question I pose. Which SK will we see? SK Gaming has a tendency to play towards their opponent, which is an easy way of saying they're good when they have to be, and they're bad when they don't have to be good. And here against Pittsburgh Knights, guess what? You've got to be good. I think this is one that the boys rise to the occasion. I could see them winning this game.
I think they certainly are capable. I mean, we've seen SK.
That is a different story.
No, I think they are. And that's why it's frustrating, I think, when I say they're probably going to end up getting 3-0'd, because the first 2 are going to be close. You're going to say, okay, SK has figured it out. They're right there. And then it feels like it's right on the tip of your tongue, and you can never remember the word.
That's what I'm saying. I will never come up here and say SK Gaming are not capable. I think that they're
Sure.
capable of being the #1 team in the league. They're capable of getting my vote every single match. Is it probable? Is a different story. They have the talent. Will it line up in the right spot? And I think that's what the team is asking themselves. If I knew the answer, I'd leave here and coach them. That's the situation we're in, because they're a great team. They got all the great people. They got all the right strategies. Neil Ma's doing great over there for them in the support position. But when does it all come together? They can't figure out how to slide those pieces. And when they do, we'll get the achievement unlocked. They'll be #1.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of potential for the squad. I think Neil is a good highlight by you, because he's had a tough start to phase 2. He has not looked quite as comfortable, and your front line, I feel like he's been a little bit too far forward. There seems to be a little bit of a disconnect there between him and the rest of the squad.
That's really what I was kind of getting at, is that Neil started off with these great instincts and looked like a great part of the team, and now as we transition to phase number 2, we're seeing different levels of communication. Sometimes Zap and Neil look like they're perfect, and Neil comes out of nowhere and they gank that lane, and other times Neil's just, I won't say in the wrong spot, because I'm not in their comms, and I think that's really important, But at the end of the day, looking at it, Neil does wind up being the odd man out. How do you bring that together? Well, when Neil's together, they win the game. Again, that is the golden question. That is the unanswerable theorem right now, is how do you get all of those stars to align on SK Gaming? Because when they align, they absolutely make it happen.
And it makes me think of game 2 against the United, where Sam looks like he's one of the best junglers in the world, and you see the glimpses there for this team.
And see, that's the thing. You brought up Neil Ma as kind of the poster child for this, but I mean, it's all of them have their inconsistencies. Sam comes out, like you said, in game number 2 and looks fantastic, and then Sam will go 0-2-0. Not feeding, but absolutely not helping the cause. Neil Ma will show up on Hercules and win you the game, and then next time around he'll miss everything. You know what I mean? Zapman will look fantastic, get the solo in lane, transition in team fights perfectly, or he's 1-0 on the Morrigan that's not really doing anything. So for me, it's a team synergy thing, or it's a team individual thing. The team as a whole, we get their team fights. We see their communication. We see their objective calls. The teamwork, which is usually what we sit up here yelling about, synergy, is fine.
Sure.
It's everybody individually getting their ducks in a row and showing up every day on game day. If all 5 players perform, the team performs.
PK is going to be a tough matchup, but certainly a capable one for SK. Tom, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And going over this team. We're going to close the show coming up soon, but first we got to see PK's perspective on their opposition this week.
Hey guys, we got a new show coming out called Roll Q. This week on the premiere episode, we sat down with a bunch of the best ADCs to ever do it and talk about their hunter play, or as Funball often says during the episode, the carries, because there's a distinct difference.
I think Season 3, Emelito was the best hunter who's ever played. Well, I guess he played Aegis, actually.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, you know.
Carries.
Best carry player the game has seen.
So check it out, and thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Esports Weekly, everybody. The Pittsburgh Knights just got a power-up by visiting Pittsburgh not too long ago, but it still wasn't enough to take down Team Rival. To talk about their path moving forward, we have John Finch, their correspondent, joining us here on the desk.
Hey!
Finch, I think you should go to Pittsburgh. I think I think it will help you connect with the Pittsburgh Knights roster.
That's a good point, actually. Now I think about it, I'm gonna change my mind. I'm gonna say yes. And here's something else about that
What's
I
that?
think would be cool. I love Pittsburgh, and you're from Pittsburgh, and you're cool. So yeah, this bit's good.
Pittsburgh's great, and everyone should go there. Eat some permanis and go, why do people like this? That's part of the charm. You know, that's what we like about it. Look, Finch, the Knights, every time we feel like they're turning the corner,
Yes.
they turn the corner straight into a dead end, it feels like.
Like
and
at
then
MSI or when they played Rival at the start of the
yeah, you're picking up what I'm putting down. So what is holding them back?
And it just feels like they can't break through that top level. And that's the lower third I went with, man. Are the Knights the worst of the best? I mean, it's tough, right? Because, I mean, there's so many good teams here right now. It's hard to hold that up against them, but it does feel like when they end up meeting up against teams like Rival, when they end up meeting against the very top tier, there's this last piece that's not clicking there for this Knights team. And I don't know if it's any one thing. I think it's just that the teams at this point are so competitive that anyone could win any particular game, but there are some times where it seems like maybe the late game decision-making isn't quite there where you would want it to be for this team. I mean, and there's a lot of pressure on them. They're a super team that was put together, it felt like almost overnight. You obviously want to give them a ton of time to work together and get to that level that some of these other teams are at, but the expectations are high, and I think third place, second place, just not quite where we want or expected this team to be.
I mean, this is a team that has that level of potential, though. Do you think that, are you seeing anything in their play or their picks that you think is holding them back, or do you think it's just that there's a mental block there potentially against the best of the best?
I think so too. I don't think there's anything that I would point to in the Knights' play where I'd go, man, this is some glaring obvious issue that this team has. They're willing to play a lot of different stuff. Zeros' God pool is actually pretty different from what a lot of other mid-majors play nowadays too. I think that's a benefit to that team. I mean, I think that they're still playing really well as a unit. It's just that you got to see them bring it together when it matters most, up against the very best.
And SK Gaming is a team that they cannot afford to overlook because
Exactly.
we've seen SK look like a top-end team. Do you think this is one that could sneak up on the Knights?
I think there's a chance, but this is one where I would still consider the Knights a favorite here going into this match. And I'm just saying that kind of looking down the list in that most of their matchups, I would probably say go in favor of the Knights, right? And Zeros versus Paul is a big matchup for me that I would want to keep my eye on in particular, but I think it's one where I probably give the slight edge to Zeros in that one. When I look at it that way down the list, I do think I probably favor Knights a little bit.
But Sanford Soccer has looked phenomenal as of late. I think he and Adapting
Yeah,
are going to
ban
have a
Thor
big one.
against him, right?
Yeah. But it's also Adapting, so maybe you can just pick Thor for him. I don't know. Do you think he plays Thor at all?
Adapting? Oh, man. I mean, I don't know if this guy's ever, won any world championships or anything like that.
He has. He's won two.
Oh, well, then yes, I think he's very good at it. I do want to point out, one that could be a problem is when these two junglers end up having their most impact, Sam tends to have his impacts way earlier on in the games as opposed to Adapting, who can kind of wait a little bit. He'll pick hyper carries, he'll kind of lurk on the edges of fights and then come in. That could potentially be a problem. If Sam has that impact sooner, it might not give a chance for Adapting to come in and do Adapting things.
I'm curious to see what all the casters have to say about this week and what this matchup is going to look like, because I really feel like SK is a sneaky team. And what do you know? Tom Battinger on the SK train. Finch, how do you think this matchup's going to go?
I do think that this matchup is going to end up favoring the Knights, but the thing that SK does that more than any other team is play up and play down. So that means if they come into a team like the Knights, I think there's a really good chance you could see a 5-game set that does eventually end up going the way of the Knights.
Man, this is going to be a fun one to watch for sure. John, thank you very much for joining us to talk about PK and their potential up against SK Gaming. But this is going to be a jam-packed week of SPL. In fact, if you're missing what we've seen so far in the standings, let's take a look at those real quick. We've got SK at number 7, PK at number 3 right now, but United right on their heels, at least in record. Plus minus, not so much. Big gap there between PK and United in the plus minus department. The schedule this week is going to be another fun one. We've talked about all these games so far today, but man, getting a chance to see LG in action for the first time this phase, the rematch of the MSI Finals to open us up for the SPL on Thursday is going to be a blast, and then SK Gaming up against the Pittsburgh Knights is one that I think could be a lot of fun to watch. So make sure you're starting with us early Thursday and finishing with us on Friday as well, because from start to finish, it's going to be a great week of the SPL. as it always is. Isn't it funny how I say every week, well, we got a jam-packed show, we got a lot of great information for you, it's going to be a good one, and then I say, hey, the SPL is going to be really good this week, make sure you watch. It's not a coincidence. Every week I look at the schedule, I'm like, man, there's so many good matchups. How do we manage to do this every week? Because the level of play continues to rise and rise in the Smite Pro League, and it's not getting any worse. I can tell you that much. LG, big test, but they've got 2 tough opponents in our first week, so make sure you tune in for those to see Snoopy and Ionix debut in the blue jerseys for Luminosity. Thanks so much for watching here on Esports Weekly. As always, you can get in touch with me at Aggro on Twitter, at Smite Pro, if you want to get the news on all of your SPL sort of news and standings and all that good stuff. And until next week, we'll see you next time.